So it looks cool, but what's it actually useful for? I have strings. Why do I need tension strings? Can't I just play in the chords? What if I want to mix Constrictor with other libraries? Does it work in context? Hi, I'm Adam from Audio Imperia, and we know these are all questions you've been asking yourself. So I'm here today to show you why we made this library and how you can get the best out of your brand new tension strings. Let's go. Hello, so here we are inside the door, and this is a piece I mocked up really quickly. It's kind of like an old school horror slasher style chase piece or something, and originally I used just Nucleus. I've added a couple of extra things. I've added the clavier piano that you can see here, just because I wanted the sound of a piano, and I've also added a couple of hits from Jaeger as well. I just wanted some of the clicks and clacks from Jaeger, and I've added our hex choir as well, the first of our flourish range. I just wanted a bit of embellishment from that. Other than that, the rest has been Nucleus. But what I thought it'd be a great fun idea to do is take out some of the Nucleus stuff and add in some of the Constrictor stuff and see what a difference it made. So what I'm going to do is play this piece using just Nucleus for the strings first. Then I'm going to play it using Constrictor, and then we're going to go a little bit into how I use Constrictor and how I swapped out some of the Nucleus stuff for Constrictor. So here is the piece using just Nucleus. So as you can hear, just a sort of fun horror piece really. And then I went back in and just swapped out some of the Nucleus stuff for Constrictor, and this is what I came up with. There we go. So I think the Constrictor strings make a big difference to this. They really add a layer of realism to it. They add a layer of aggression to it. They also provide some more interesting articulations that you get from standard Nucleus libraries. Interestingly, I have kept a couple of the Nucleus string patches in, which we'll go into. So you'll see this library can blend really well in addition to just standing on its own as well. So probably the first thing to do is just look at how we've used Constrictor. You can see here's all the patches that I've used. It looks like a lot, but actually broken down, it's not that many. So the first thing I did was replace some of the low string clusters in the cello and basses that I simulated in Nucleus with real recorded clusters from our Constrictor library. So if I just show you the Nucleus clusters. They actually sound really good, but you can kind of tell when you listen closely that they're not real recorded clusters, and that does make a big difference. There's something about the way these instruments working together, the close frequency ranges in the room sort of combine together, that you can't simulate from just stacking notes on top of each other. So I'll show you what I replaced them with from Constrictor. I used our basses cluster sustains, our cello tremolo sol ponc clusters, and our cello arco clusters, and I layered them up to create this. As you can hear, there's a lot more transparent and sort of interesting textures going on there that you couldn't simulate using a standard orchestral string library. But interestingly, I wanted to add a bit of the weight that I missed from the original mockup, so I brought back in the Nucleus basses here and combined they sound like this. So that's one of the first things to say about this. This library actually combines really well with other libraries like Nucleus or Jaeger. Don't be afraid to layer it up with articulations from there. You can often get even more interesting textures that way. So these layered up really well. I was really happy with that. And that was a great start. So I took some of these out. I left the basses in, but I also added a few of our cluster sustain patches in. And that just gave me a really solid bass. And if we listen to that in combination with the choirs at the beginning and the harp as well and the piano, you get a really interesting sort of thick, creepy texture at the beginning here. Now at this section, if I just show you the Nucleus strings by themselves, they actually sound pretty good. So not too bad, and in the context of a full mix, they probably work pretty fine, but there's a lot more that we could do. So let me show you what the Constrictor sounds like at this point. So you can hear there's a lot more going on there, both in terms of articulations, but also in terms of just the way that these short, aggressive articulations marry up together. Again, this goes back to that principle that you can layer string libraries, maybe the shorts from a string library together and kind of simulate a cluster, and it's going to sound pretty good, but nothing really beats the sound of an actual string section play in these clusters, and that's what we got the strings to do when we put this library together. So as you can see, I'm using a few different violin and viola short patches, tonal shorts here stacked together. I'll just show you what I'm using. I'm using the clustered stabs in the violins 1, and I've also simulated the violins 2 by doubling them up, and I've also used the clustered stabs in the violas as well. But to that, I've added these atonal stabs. One of the great things about this library is that we have both sort of random atonal stabs and clustered, more orderly pitch stabs. Everything in this library is atonal, really, but you'll see that the clustered stabs have a little bit more orderliness to them than the random stabs. But you can layer them together and just create these really interesting sort of dense textures. So the tonal patches on their own sound like this. Really nice. And then with the atonal cello, it sounds like this. So you can hear the atonal patches are really just bringing the chaos to this and that sense of randomness. And the tonal patches are giving us a bit more of a bass. And then I'm also layering some cluster sustains and harmonic clusters here as well to add some of the longer sort of elements that are fitting in between the short notes. Again, I'm just kind of layering these up, trying different pitches, seeing what I like, seeing what sounds good. There's so much choice in this library. You could just endlessly combine these things together. You're never going to get exactly the same sound twice. And because we've sampled the library in different sections, violins, violas, cellos, basses, and we've sampled a whole bunch of articulations, literally hundreds, and we've sampled them across some of the range of each instrument, you can just go on for days with this kind of stuff and never get the same thing. And I think that's really important with this kind of music. You want that constant sense of chaos and that unnerving, unknowable sense of, you know, what's going to come next. And that's sometimes hard to get when, again, you're just layering up traditional orchestral string libraries. You're not going to get quite the same amount of chaos in those. And let's just move on to what I did in the second half of this. So you'll hear, if I play this all together, we have this. So in the second half of this, I wanted to introduce some real tension, more than I could do with the traditional Nucleus strings. And I did this by introducing two sustain patches, or rather one sustain patch and one rises patch. If I just play them in isolation, we get this. So really nice, really interesting, tense, unnerving, rising sort of articulations there. And then at that point, I'm also changing these tonal shorts. I'm removing the atonal shorts to make some space for these rises and these sustain patches. And the tonal shorts are becoming sort of more frenetic, if you like. So whereas you have this quite jittery sort of motif at the beginning, you'll hear in the second half, they're a lot more consistent. And they're also higher up. That's doing several things. Number one, it's building the tension. Number two, because they're higher up, it's creating some space in the middle of the arrangement for me to add the viola chromatic chatter and the viola rises as well. And so if I just bring them all together and play them in the context. So yeah, really nice, really sort of dense, unnerving, aggressive end to that middle section there. And interestingly, again, I was going to use some of the Constrictor bass and cello stuff to provide the low end, but actually, the more I listened, the more I really liked what I got out of Nucleus. So I just duplicated my Nucleus mock-up stuff here and brought it down the bottom. And you can hear this is the Nucleus stuff on its own. Sounds really good. Maybe not quite as realistic as it could do, but actually, layered up with the rest of the stuff, it provides a really solid foundation for this section of the piece. And I didn't really see any need to change that. I could have tried some more Constrictor stuff, but again, I really like the idea of ending up combining these libraries as opposed to simply replacing one with another. And it's so interesting kind of what you get when you combine them together. You're going to get different things than had you just use Constrictor or just use Nucleus. So altogether, they sound really good, I think. Yeah, I think they sound really good, and I think that they provide sort of a really solid foundation for the rest of the Constrictor stuff to play off. So if we just move to the end of the piece now here, what I did in the original mock-up with the Nucleus strings was I just copied the clusters from the beginning. Again, they sound really good, but, you know, it didn't quite have what I was looking for. I wanted something that sounded a little bit more interesting. So I searched around Constrictor to see what I could replace them with, and I got these two really interesting textures. I got one in the cello called the attacked cluster de gliss, which is a kind of cluster with a strong attack, and then we have this really unnerving gliss, which is basically a pitch slide up at the end of the articulation. And then we also have this patch called nausea, and this is just where we got the players to play really slow, random pitch bends in sustained notes, and it creates this quite sickly sort of sound. So as you can hear, it just sounds quite sickly, quite kind of nasty. And I combined those together and I got this at the end. I really love how those two combine together, because you have this, again, this kind of constant unnerving sense of chaos, and then the way you have this gradual sort of gliss up at the end in the cello just adds this quite horrible sense of what's going to come next. And it's just an interesting way to end a piece, as opposed to just ending with a sustained note. You actually have this creepy kind of rise, and it's a rise to nothing, or is it? Who knows? But yeah, I thought that worked really well, and I just combined them with the Nucleus choir and the clavier piano that were just playing these sort of horrible clusters, and a bit in the brass. So all together they sound, and also the Nucleus bowed cymbals, they sound really creepy on their own as well, but combined it sounded like this. Yeah, great. I mean, I'm really pleased with the way Constrictor took this mock-up to the next level. I think it added so much, and it also sort of shows that really when you're doing this horror and tension stuff, you can certainly use traditional orchestral libraries to simulate some of it, often to pretty convincing effect, but there's really a case to be made for having these samples pre-recorded, because there's sort of nothing like an orchestra actually playing these kind of creepy clusters and crazy harmonic, screams and squelches and things. You can't quite simulate them with traditional articulations. But what I was also really happy with when I put this mock-up together and added Constrictor is just how well Constrictor blended in and added this sort of really nice, aggressive, interesting texture that I wasn't quite getting out of Nucleus. And then I just used some of the Nucleus articulations, the strings, just to really bed everything in and make it all kind of glued together. So yeah, I hope this has given you a little sense of what Constrictor is capable of, how you might use it in context, the kinds of sounds you can get out of it. This has not even scratched the surface of what's in this library. I recommend checking out the walkthrough to see a little bit more of what we have in there. There's just so much that we won't get through in a 2-hour video, let alone a 20-minute one. There we go, guys. I hope this has been fun. Hope it's shown you a little bit of what Constrictor has to offer. If you've enjoyed this, please like the video, subscribe to our channel. There's going to be a lot more content coming in the future. Thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing you next time.